Listen carefully because this is not a small message, and it is not something you should dismiss too quickly. There may be someone who still holds a meaningful place in your heart, and right now they could be carrying a weight that has quietly become too heavy for them to manage alone. That weight may be changing the way they think. It may be stealing their peace, and sometimes when two people have shared something truly meaningful, those emotions can leave a lasting impression that reaches farther than expected. Maybe you have already noticed small moments that are difficult to explain, a memory that suddenly appeared out of nowhere, a thought that stayed with you much longer than usual, a feeling that settled in your chest without an obvious reason. Moments like these often make us stop and wonder. They invite us to pay closer attention to what our own heart has been trying to understand. So stay with this message until the end, because what you are about to hear may offer a different way of looking at what you have been feeling for a long time. Don't scroll away just yet. The next part could make everything connect in a way you never expected. Slow down for a moment. Let these words sink in. Sometimes the answers we search for begin with a simple moment of reflection. The person who still matters to you may be carrying confusion, pressure, and emotions they have struggled to fully understand. From the outside, they might appear completely fine. They may continue following the same routines. They may stay busy. They may smile, talk, and act as though everything is under control. But inside, things can look very different. Thoughts they tried to ignore may slowly be returning. Feelings they believed had disappeared may quietly rise to the surface again. This is not about fear. It is about awareness. It is about recognizing that people often carry silent battles no one else can see. Keep watching because the next idea may explain why some emotions never seem to completely fade, no matter how much time has passed. There may be a part of them that has remained closed for much longer than they ever intended. Over time, life has a way of gently pushing people toward the truths they have been avoiding. The biggest challenge is often not what happens around us but what happens inside us. It becomes a quiet struggle between staying where everything feels familiar and facing what feels deeply honest. For a long time they may have believed they could move forward without fully looking at certain feelings that never completely disappeared. They may have convinced themselves that staying occupied would be enough. They may have hoped that time alone would naturally soften every memory. They may have believed that some emotions could simply be placed aside forever, while life continued as usual. But real feelings often refuse to disappear just because they are ignored. Some memories continue to return when we least expect them. Some connections continue to leave their mark long after distance or silence has entered the story. That does not always mean people will come back together. But it does remind us that meaningful experiences can shape us for years. Stay with me because what comes next may help you see this situation from a completely different angle. Sometimes the greatest changes begin quietly, long before anyone else notices them. And sometimes understanding another person's struggle starts with recognizing how every human heart eventually reaches a moment where avoiding the truth becomes harder than facing it. This may be the stage they are moving through right now. The thoughts they once managed to push aside may now be returning during the quiet moments at the end of long days. Feelings they worked so hard to ignore may be growing stronger inside them. Their heart may be asking questions that their mind can no longer easily avoid. That kind of inner conflict creates distraction and emotional uncertainty that is difficult for anyone to explain, even to themselves. One part of them may long for clear answers. Another part may fear what those answers could require. One side wants to move closer. Another still remembers old pain and holds them back. If their behavior has seemed mixed or inconsistent lately, this could be one reason. If they seem close one day and distant the next, there may be more happening beneath the surface than you can see. It is not always because someone does not care. Sometimes people step back because they care more deeply than they know how to handle. When emotions become complicated, distance can feel easier than facing everything at once. Keep watching because the next part may give you a completely different perspective. What they could be experiencing is not empty confusion. It is not meaningless hesitation. It may simply be the quiet pressure that builds before someone is finally ready to face what they have been avoiding. Even if nothing seems different on the outside, that does not always mean nothing is changing within. Some of life's biggest changes begin where no one else can see them. Think about how roots grow beneath the ground long before a tree reaches into the sky. Think about how a strong foundation is built before a house ever appears. Personal growth often works in the same way. It begins quietly, it takes time, it remains invisible until one day the changes become impossible to ignore. They may be realizing that what once felt comfortable no longer brings real peace. Old distractions may not work the way they used to. The habits they relied on to avoid difficult emotions may be losing their power. Silence may feel louder now. Keeping busy may no longer provide the same escape. Something deeper could be asking for honesty. And honesty has a way of changing a person's direction, even when that change feels uncomfortable at first. Once someone begins to recognize what they have been avoiding, it becomes much harder to pretend everything is fine. That realization can slowly reshape how they think, what they value, and the choices they eventually make. Keep listening, because this next idea matters. Real change rarely happens all at once. It often starts with quiet moments that no one else notices before becoming visible through actions, conversations, and decisions. That is why certain thoughts may continue returning. That is why familiar memories sometimes refuse to fade. It is simply how people process experiences that still matter to them. You may have experienced something similar yourself. Perhaps old memories have appeared without warning. Maybe certain emotions have surfaced when you least expected them. You may even feel that there are still unanswered questions between you and this person. It is okay to notice those feelings. Just do not allow them to take away your peace. Reflection can be healthy, but constant assumptions rarely bring clarity. If change is happening, it will reveal itself over time. Growth inside the heart usually comes before visible action. Right now, your role is not to force answers. It is not to chase certainty before its time. It is not to fill every silence with conclusions, simply to quiet your own uncertainty. Your role is to remain steady while life unfolds naturally. That is a different kind of strength. It is calm, it is patient. It does not collapse simply because answers take longer than expected. It refuses to let fear decide the ending before the full story has had the chance to unfold. Every season teaches something valuable. While another person may be learning to face difficult emotions, you may be learning patience, emotional balance, and trust in your own judgment. Those lessons are not always easy, but they often shape us in lasting ways. Many people lose meaningful relationships, not because those relationships lacked value, but because fear spoke louder than patience. They reacted before they understood the full picture. They made decisions in moments of confusion, and later wished they had given themselves more time. You do not have to repeat that pattern. If your heart has felt restless, give yourself permission to slow down. If your thoughts have been racing ahead with assumptions, gently question them instead of accepting them as facts. If you have been expecting the worst, choose to protect your peace while allowing reality to unfold in its own time. And if these words connect with something inside you, stay with them a little longer, because there is one more important thought to consider. Sometimes people become tired of carrying emotions they never fully dealt with. They grow weary of replaying the same memories. They become exhausted from pretending certain feelings no longer exist, or wondering about paths they never explored. That kind of emotional exhaustion can become the moment when avoidance finally stops working. A person can only push difficult feelings aside for so long before facing them becomes easier than continuing to run. They may not fully understand that process yet. They may still hesitate. But meaningful change often begins with that first quiet moment of honesty. They may still move back and forth between moments of confidence and moments of doubt, yet something within them could already be shifting. The comfort they once held onto so tightly may no longer feel as safe as the truth they have tried to avoid for so long. When that kind of inner change begins, life can sometimes move much faster than anyone expects. A conversation that once felt impossible can suddenly become possible. A truth that stayed hidden for months or even years can finally come into the light. A heart that remained guarded for a long time can slowly begin to soften again. So if everything has felt slow until now, do not assume it will always stay that way. If there has been distance between you, remember that distance does not always last forever. Some of life's biggest turning points arrive after long seasons of silence. Some of the clearest answers appear only after long periods of waiting and reflection. Stay with this message because the next idea may change the way you see everything. Your role right now is not to give up hope. It is to stay aware, remain steady, and keep your heart open enough to recognize real change when it happens in everyday life, instead of searching for signs in every passing emotion. Sometimes the quietest moments prepare us for the biggest shifts. There may also be many influences shaping the choices they make. Not every influence leads someone toward growth. Some people and situations encourage honesty, self-reflection, and emotional maturity. Others make it easier to avoid difficult conversations and remain inside familiar patterns. Some experiences push people to think more deeply about the direction of their lives. Others offer endless distractions that keep important questions buried beneath the surface. That may explain why their behavior sometimes feels inconsistent. On certain days they seem calm, focused, and ready to move forward. On other days, uncertainty returns, and old fears seem to take over once again. At times they may appear ready to face everything openly, yet a familiar wound or lingering doubt may pull them back. Do not automatically assume that hesitation means someone does not care. Quite often, hesitation grows because emotions feel overwhelming and difficult to carry all at once. They may be wrestling with vulnerability. They may be learning how to face emotions they once avoided. They may even be wondering how life could change if difficult truths were finally spoken aloud. Fear is powerful, but it does not always remain in control forever. Keep watching because this next part matters more than you might think. Little by little, honesty often becomes stronger than fear. And when that happens, change begins to show itself in quiet but meaningful ways. You may notice those changes through very small moments before anything dramatic happens. Perhaps their tone becomes softer. Maybe a conversation feels more genuine than before. Maybe they become a little more open, a little more thoughtful, or a little more willing to listen. Those small moments often matter far more than they first appear. Personal growth rarely arrives all at once. Most of the time it develops step by step, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes slowly, but always through steady progress. If you wait only for perfect results, you may overlook the first signs that something meaningful is beginning to change. At the same time, this season can also shape you. You may be learning how to protect your peace without closing your heart. You may be discovering how to trust your own judgment instead of constantly searching for reassurance. You may be learning to remain calm, even when answers take longer than expected. Those lessons are not easy. Yet they often become some of the most valuable ones we ever receive. So continue with patience. Keep your heart open without becoming consumed by uncertainty. Keep your thoughts clear without allowing fear to take over. Give time the space it needs instead of trying to force outcomes before they are ready. What truly belongs in your life will become clearer with time. The next chapter of any meaningful connection often asks for something deeper than perfect words. It asks for maturity. It asks for the ability to listen before reacting, to speak honestly without letting fear control every conversation, and to choose understanding instead of repeating old habits. Maybe a year ago this situation would have affected you much more than it does today. Perhaps uncertainty would have filled your thoughts and pulled your emotions in every direction. But people grow, often without noticing it at first. Challenges can build resilience. Disappointments can teach wisdom. Every difficult season has the potential to leave behind something valuable, even if that lesson only becomes clear much later. None of those experiences have to be wasted. They can become the reason you now respond with greater calm instead of immediate fear. That quiet strength matters. It develops slowly through experience, reflection, and steady personal growth. So take a moment to recognize how far you have already come. Notice how your reactions have changed. Notice how uncertainty no longer controls you the way it once did. And when the next chapter finally begins, do not expect it to arrive through dramatic speeches or perfect moments. Often it starts with something simple, a thoughtful message, a calm conversation, a quiet realization that honesty has finally become easier than silence. Sometimes that is where the most meaningful changes truly begin. If that moment ever arrives, do not expect perfect words. Expect honesty instead. Expect real human emotion. Expect uncomfortable pauses, unfinished thoughts, and truth that unfolds little by little rather than all at once. Most people do not reveal everything during a single conversation. More often, they open their heart one step at a time, sharing small pieces that slowly come together into a much larger picture. Sometimes the first sign of real change is not a dramatic confession. Sometimes it is simply that a person stops running from feelings they have avoided for a long time. Even that quiet step can carry deep meaning, because when avoidance begins to fade, self-awareness often starts to grow. And when awareness grows, situations that once felt stuck may finally begin to move forward. Stay with this message because the next part could change the way you see this entire journey. If that moment comes, do not focus only on the words you hear. Notice the emotion behind them. Pay attention to the courage it may have taken to speak honestly. Recognize the movement from silence toward openness. Watch how truth slowly replaces fear, one small step at a time. Real change often appears much softer than people expect. It rarely arrives with perfect confidence. Sometimes it shows itself through hesitation, through imperfect honesty, or through someone admitting something they have carried quietly for far too long. Those moments may seem small, yet they often become the beginning of something much bigger. So remain calm and stay thoughtful. Do not let old fears cause you to misunderstand a new beginning. Every meaningful situation unfolds in its own time, even when parts of the journey still feel uncertain or quiet. Important changes can be taking place beneath the surface. There are seasons when nothing appears to be happening, yet unseen progress is slowly preparing the way for what comes next. Keep watching because this next idea matters more than you might think. When those changes eventually become visible, your emotional balance may matter more than anything else. It can help you respond with patience instead of panic, and understanding instead of assumptions. If certain memories have returned lately, or if familiar thoughts keep finding their way back into your mind, allow them to become opportunities for reflection rather than immediate conclusions. Sometimes our own experiences ask us to pause and learn instead of rushing toward answers. This season is not only about emotions, it can also become a season of personal growth, greater self-awareness, and a deeper understanding of what truly matters. Pressure does not always exist to destroy what is meaningful. At times it simply reveals what deserves honest attention and what can no longer remain hidden beneath distraction. Fear often encourages quick reactions. Wisdom usually asks for something different. It invites patience. It encourages careful observation. It reminds us to wait until reality becomes clearer before deciding what something truly means. Personal growth rarely follows a straight path. It often feels confusing before it finally begins to make sense. Clarity usually develops gradually through thoughtful choices, honest conversations, and small changes that build over time. Step by step, the picture becomes easier to understand. Even if you cannot yet see every piece, trust that understanding often arrives little by little, instead of all at once. If waiting has left you feeling tired or uncertain, remember that not every chapter reaches its conclusion as quickly as we hope. The story is still unfolding, and what comes next will depend on choices that have not yet been fully made. Every decision matters. Choosing honesty over assumptions matters. Choosing calm over fear matters. Choosing open communication instead of silence can make a meaningful difference. At the same time, you also have choices to make. You can decide whether fear will guide your reactions or whether patience and wisdom will shape your response. That is why this moment deserves your attention, not because everything has already been decided, but because life is always moving, growing, and creating new possibilities. Stay with me until the end, because the final thought may be the most important one of all. This journey is not only about another person, it is also about who you are becoming through every challenge, every question, and every lesson you have faced along the way. Meaningful relationships are rarely measured during easy seasons. More often they reveal their true value during uncertain ones. They are tested when clarity takes time, when emotions become complicated, and when patience is required. Some connections grow stronger through those experiences, while others naturally lead people in different directions. Either outcome can bring valuable lessons. If you have been wondering whether something important is changing, focus first on what you know with confidence. You are growing. You are becoming more thoughtful, more emotionally steady, and more aware of how you want to respond to life's challenges. Old fears do not have to control every decision. Old habits do not have to define every new chapter. Protect your heart, but do not close it completely. Stay open enough to recognize honesty when it appears, while remaining grounded enough not to lose yourself in uncertainty. The next step in your journey may arrive in a quiet and unexpected way. When it does, clarity will serve you better than fear ever could. Keep that truth close as you continue moving forward. Difficult seasons do not last forever. Confusion eventually gives way to greater understanding. Waiting does not continue forever. Every stage of life has something valuable to teach, and every experience leaves behind wisdom if we are willing to learn from it. No matter what happens next, you have already grown stronger, wiser, and more prepared than when this journey first began.